making making it commonplace and normal, and being proud of it, and almost in a recommending way, saying that masks on kids is perfectly normal. And whenever they come out of the schools, they're not even ripping it off their face. That's a problem. And for you guys to be taking advice from a doctor who thinks that's okay is not okay. You are teaching children that this is a normal reaction to have. This is not the pandemic that we all feared it was going to be months ago. Months ago. Are you happy? Are you happy right now? Nobody over here is happy. Nobody. And for you guys to listen to a doctor who is propagating it like it's some pro, hey, look at all the kids. They're not ripping their masks off. That's an issue. You should be concerned with that information and with that advice coming from somebody who is making that into a pro. This is ridiculous. I agree. I agree with other speakers. We all understand that you have your minds made up. You got to start thinking outside your little bubble of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We see it. We see what's going on, okay? We know what party you stand, we know what side you stand on, okay? And I don't know if you know this, but even Democrats hate masks, just in case you had any false conceptions about that. We are tired of it. It is ridiculous. Start thinking for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opponent, please.
Hello, my name is Julie Ostran. I live at 1724 North 169th Street. I am very proud to be a fourth-generation Nebraskan. My great-grandparents came over here from Europe, and I was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. I have 5 children, one with special needs. They're preschool through junior high age. As adults, we here have the privilege of being able to decide when and where we want to wear our masks based on where we go. But as a mother with school-age children, I've just got to tell you, I know you've heard the comments, but it is tough for these kids sitting 8 hours a day. When my kindergartner started school this year, he was able to not wear his mask at recess, but they changed the rules, and now he literally can only take it off at lunch. And the kindergarten teacher said, it's very difficult. They can't teach one-on-one. They can't teach in groups. She said, if I wear a mask and a face shield and sit 6 feet away, can I teach them? And the administration said no. So the effects on our young kids are it scares me a little bit as a mom. So my question is, I have looked high and low for one single study. Maybe you've seen it. If you found one, I would love to know what it is that says there are no adverse effects to long-term mask wearing. I just can't find one. So if you, or maybe the mayor or Dr. Poore has access to that study, personally, I would love to see it. As a mother, it would make me feel much better. But if you have not found that study, I would just respectfully plead with you to please consider this mask mandate, not to reinstate it, please. And especially for our kids, I would just ask you to please consider them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next opponent, please. Seeing none, Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, council members.
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Burt Street. This ordinance is not for the council to keep. It's for Dr. Poore to implement a health directive that she was not allowed to enforce because of Governor Pete Ricketts. So I encourage you guys to listen to Dr. Poore very carefully so she can manage a health directive, which is social distancing and wearing a mask, because the police might not fine somebody for wearing a mask, or the police or law enforcement won't enforce a mask. People wearing a mask does not preclude people from wearing a mask. So I continue to support Dr. Poore. I've heard some businesses are opening up now that that there's health directives. People are confident of going to work, and that's a good thing. I just also want to share some personal experience through this time, and just say that 2020 has been a very difficult year, but surprisingly, it's been also a very good year for me, and I am happy as an individual. Also, I am, wanting to do my part and better myself this year more than I have any time in my life, I think. But there's concerns. There are real concerns about what the mask mandate means and what it's doing. When is it gonna be lifted? It's we all want to take off our masks, but I think at this point, I think Dr. Poor is the one to tell us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals wishing to testify on this item on the agenda?
My name is Ford Momarts Brown, 3525 Cumming. And I would like to start off by apologizing to the council, and particularly the president, for shouting out earlier. It was out of line. I had just gotten very worked up. It's one of my pet peeves of people claiming constitutional rights and then quoting something other than the Constitution. I believe the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is a Declaration of Independence. And there are no constitutional rights guaranteed by the Declaration of Independence. Principles, yes. Rights, no. But also, I would like to make the statement that I am sick and tired of being told how I can practice my religion as a Jew. My religion requires that when you live in a society or a community, by joining that society or community, you take on a responsibility for every other child of God in that society or community. And if you're not a stylite living on top of a pole, or you're not a hermit living in some cave by yourself, then you wear a mask if that's what the community as a whole demands. And yes, there are some Democrats who don't like masks, just like there are some Republicans who do like masks. It all depends on your attitude towards your fellow man. Now, I understand that they are awkward, they are uncomfortable, but that's part of your responsibility to the community in which you elect to live. And I'm not saying anything is wrong or evil about those people who don't like the idea, but there is no constitutional right to disregard or neglect the welfare or the well-being of your fellow citizens. So it makes no difference to me. I find these bothersome too, and after a while they get smelly. But I just spray some air freshener on them and go on with it. So it makes no difference to me whether you extend this or not. But I don't think that anti-scientists should be teaching science. I think you guys have done the research, and you should be listening to scientists and people who have studied and practiced and hold a current medical degree to do what is best for your constituents. And somebody told you that you should think for yourselves. No, that's not your job. You got elected and paid for thinking for your constituents.
Your time's expired.
Thank you.
The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll just have a couple quick things to say. I was going to say more next week, and I will, but I wanted to just address a couple things quickly. One, Ms. Scholes, thanks for coming down here. I'm going to plan to reintroduce that amendment next week. Secondly, I wish Dr. Merritt were still here because, and kind of dovetailing on what Mr. Brown just said, listening to scientists. Science is split. It's not all on one side. They have different opinions on the effectiveness of masks. And what Dr. Merritt had talked about was something that I've been reading a little bit about when we're talking about the size of the virus and whether or not something like this or what Councilmember Melton or others have on provide any protection against the size of this virus. But I guess I'll have more on that next week. One other thing, I said this at the beginning of this, to people who aren't wearing masks, the people who confront them, be respectful, be responsible. There may be a reason that they're not wearing a mask, and that's not necessarily your business. The last thing, Dr. Poore mentioned the positivity number from last week. I find it interesting that she comes in this week and tells us about the positivity rate last week. Didn't say that in weeks previous when it went up. But I will tell you, in the 7 weeks that this mask mandate has been in place, compared to the 7 weeks prior, the number's gone up. I'll have more to say next week.
Thank you, Council Member Harding. Vice President Palermo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll keep it brief as well. But Dr. Adipour, you're here. Would you like to come down for a minute for a couple questions?
Adipour, Douglas County Health Department, 111 South 41st Street.
Thanks for coming down. With all due respect, a few weeks ago, I made it perfectly clear that this is not our job. This is your job. You chose not to act upon it, and that's fine. Your job's your job, our job is our job. So let me ask you, with where the numbers were, say last week, or say a month ago, to where the numbers will be in a week or so, do you feel that you will have to take it upon yourself, looking at the numbers, to implement this mandate without us being involved?
You know, Councilman, as I said before, the governor feels very strongly that I don't have the authority. So I'm not going to go down that route. And I think I said that from the beginning. I need to focus on this community and this community's health, and cannot be caught up in legal matters at this time. So we know that you have the authority, and as in many communities nationwide, city councils have taken these mandates on. So it is not unusual. So that's just what I would say to you.
Well, I would say that I know you've had discussions with our law department, and I know the law department has made it perfectly clear that they would stand behind you and support you and be able to back you on you as the Douglas County Health Director enforcing this mask mandate. So you being worried about the governor, I don't buy that.
There were legal discussions in that meeting. That's all I can say.
Well, I would ask Bernard, but I don't know that he was in that meeting, so that wouldn't be fair. And this is with all due respect, but you have to keep in mind, us as elected officials, we got some very smart people up here, but there's no medical doctors. This was forced upon us because the job was not done before. I know we have letters from businesses, we have letters from schools, and everybody has their own personal choice to wear a mask or not. I don't think the Omaha Police Department has issued a citation to anybody. And I don't know, but I don't think they have.
Correct, they have not.
So
they have not.
When we hear about being told to do something or forced to do something, there may be certain businesses that choose to not sell you something. And I know we have this in front of us to ask, because there's a certain percentage of people that I truly believe we're protecting. There's some that it's just not going to matter, and there's some that aren't going to wear a mask, and I have them in my family, and I don't care. If they don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. But I am coming to the point where I'm not going to continue to vote for something when it's your job. And I just want you to pay attention to the numbers, and I'll have more to say. Thank you, Dr. Adipour. When people tell us to pay attention, we are. We're not scientists. We listen to our constituents. I have said this here before. I've said it on the radio. I've said it in different meetings. I listen to my constituents. We each represent a district. My district has various jobs, close quarters, that they have to put protections in place to stay open. I don't know about the other districts. I know about my district. I've been on the tours to the facilities that have 800 employees, and 80% of them live in 68107. That's just not a zip code in District 4. That's the zip code I live in. These are hot spots. This is a business that was closed. They're open now, and not just because of the mask, but it is a part of it. So there shouldn't be this divide of, and especially the thing of your party. I have never went anywhere and said, what party are you with? Do you believe in a mask? I don't buy that. That's not the way this works. I appreciated the emergency ordinance a little more because it had an end date that we could decide on. Because the way this is structured now, and believe me, I choose to wear a mask. There's many times in my day where I'm not affected. When I'm in my car, I don't wear one. If I go into the gas station, sure, I'll put one on, so what? But half the time I have to run back to my car to get it because I forgot it. But I still put it on. Is it an inconvenience? No. And there's also that part of, well, 99%. And we go back to my district. Omaha South High is in my district, the largest high school in Nebraska. So if you have 3,000 kids in a high school, and you say, well, it's only going to affect, that one person out of 100. Well, go ahead and line up them 3,000 kids and tell me which one of them kids you want sick. That's 30 kids. Who's going to pick the 30 kids who get sick? And then if you pick that school in my district, how many of them 30 kids actually have health insurance if they were to get sick? It's not just we're doing this to make anybody uncomfortable. There's some underlying issues for each one of us in our districts. It's the kids, it's the schools. I don't not only have the largest high school, I have the largest elementary, and I think I have the largest middle school, all within a 1-mile radius of where I live. Sure, it's an inconvenience. I have a lot of kids myself. They haven't seen their friends. They hate it. OPS is going back to school. Other districts that are back, that's great. They're moving along, and maybe the numbers are, people are saying, well, the masks don't work because the numbers are the same. No, it's because everybody was sheltered in place. They're slowly integrating back into the public. But there's 54,000 kids, and there's 9,000 staff. And if you put that back to the people, if you take the students and you take the staff and you take them students' homes, and a majority are in my district, you have over a quarter of the population of the city of Omaha that aren't in general circulation, at least to where it was before. Think about that. Does the mask work? It helps. Does it solve all the problems? Is it going to stop everything from happening? No, not at all. If I'm wrong from listening to my constituents, then there's some inconvenience, and I'm just going to say it. There's some inconvenience. But if I'm right, and the mask helps, and we help from a lot of people getting sick, I won't even say dying, but I'll say being sick, then it was worth it. Again, I am one of 7 votes on this council. I will defend my vote on this as long as I have to make it, but I am nearing towards the end, because once OPS is back in school and we see how the numbers go, I may have a different opinion from my constituents, and that's what I'm always going to go by. There's science on this side you can look at, science on this side. We could all put whatever numbers we want. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. I've never looked at the science or data because that's not my job. My job's a list of my constituents. And until they tell me otherwise, this is the way I'm going to be. And it's not because I'm not listening. Trust me, I'm on my own course of what I got going on. So anybody that says wake up or figure out what's going on, oh, trust me, I'm very well aware. Dr. Poor, I would ask you, if you think we need a mask mandate, you make the choice. Don't make us do it. It's not our job. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Palermo. Councilmember Melton, you're recognized.
I just wanted to say, Dr. Poor, I hope you're going to be here next week because that's when next week is when I plan to have all of my questions for you. I know it's getting late this evening, but I just wanted to make sure you're coming back tomorrow.
You said don't. She won't be here, she said.
You're not going to be here next week for our vote?
Unfortunately.
Wow. Well, then I guess come up. I don't have my questions for you today. I was planning to ask them next week. Could you please come back to the podium?
Yes, absolutely. Adi Poor, Douglas County Health Department.
Well, we have a vote on a mask mandate, and apparently you would pass the mask mandate, and you're the head of our.
Well, I
head of
thought
our
you
health
had a
department.
public hearing today, and that's when I was going to be here for answering questions or so on. I didn't know, and this was organized a long time ago, so I'm sorry.
Well,
But I can have one of my other staff here if you want to.
well, yeah, have somebody that can answer questions such as,
Yeah.
when does it end? When will
I
you
think-
can we go into like a phase? Like, the governor did phases. Can we, and I'm gonna take it off because I'm talking. Can we go into phases? Like maybe we could start out with kids under 10 don't have to wear a mask. And then we could go to maybe phase 2, and maybe we could exempt, nonprofits or organizations who wanted that. Sorry, right there. Sorry, just wanted. I mean, could we do some phases as opposed to all or nothing so that, because by the way, I actually have to say, Dr. Poor, when you said I went to school and saw all the kids and they just love them so much, they kept their mask on after they got out and were walking home. I mean, first of all, I have a 13-year-old and some nieces and nephews, and no, as soon as they're done with school, they whip those things off. It is really difficult for them to wear those all day long. We're fortunate, and I think in our school, that they do give the kids mask breaks. But no, I want my child to be breathing in fresh air. That's good for him. I don't want him wearing a mask while walking home alone after school. It's about as stupid as wearing it in the car. So I'm glad that you spent 1 hour in a school and thought all 1,000 kids were hunky-dory with it. They're not. And it's really affecting how they learn. It's really affecting their daily process. So maybe we could think about doing some phases. And that's what I would appreciate, as opposed to try and turn this around and make it look like the people in this room are just crazy, and if they would just wear a mask for 8 hours, they'd get used to it, and maybe they would just wear it even when they are by themselves, because they've decided it's just so great to breathe in their own. And Dr. Port, listen, I've always been a big supporter of you. Sent you an email telling you that I would have supported you had you done the mandate. If that's what you thought, I would have legally supported your right to do that, in my opinion. Not that I would support the mask mandate, that's something completely different. But the authority as written right now, I do believe you have it. Now it's with the council, and I think at some point it needs to end, and I'm not sure if the council's listening to you to tell them when to end it, or if we're gonna tell you when we want it ended. And I guess I don't know who's making the call, so I think the council's just gonna keep putting a mask mandate up. So I guarantee you, we're gonna see one 2 weeks from now. Will be on our agenda, because it's gonna have to be on our agenda in October in order to extend the November 24th mandate. And I haven't heard anyone on this council saying, no, we absolutely think November 24th is the right date. Because I don't know I don't know, and nobody on the council who's for it has has really told me, no, Amy, I'm not going to continue to have the mandate every 3 weeks or whatever for us to vote on until I see this. And when you say 5%, I don't want to hear 5%. If our tests go to 100 and 6 people test positive, then we have a 6% rate, and yet only 6 people who maybe had no symptoms tested positive. So that percentage, I don't want to hear. Is there something other than the percentage which can be manipulated?
You know, let me just say a few things, because you actually said quite a few things. First of all, what I observed in school is what I observed. That may be different than what you are observing. So what I shared with you is what I saw watching these kids that afternoon. The superintendent was standing next to me, and he said, "Look at this. Can you believe this?" I said, "No, I couldn't really." So I'm sure everybody has a different experience. We also asked, when we went around and we asked the students, and I tell you, myself, as everybody else in this community, wants children to be in school. That's number one. We heard mental health. It's number one for children to be in school. Every classroom I went into, the kids would say, "We love to be back to school." We have adjusted the direct health measures with the governor across the state of Nebraska to be a little bit more uniform, and so we are giving credit to wearing masks. So even if a case is wearing a mask and everybody around them wears a mask, they are not going to be in quarantine. They're going to be self-monitoring. So really trying to see, and that actually goes a little bit in the direction that you are suggesting. Can we go a little bit in phases? And I have agreed to this because it was different than what we had before, because I looked at the data for the first 4 weeks. And I saw from the data we had 1,100 individuals that were in quarantine, and of those, only 3 of those came home, were affected by COVID, by transmission in the classroom. So that told me that we could kind of step back, and that's why we thought self-monitoring, because we do know how important it is to keep these children. So I would say to you, I'm very open-minded, and I'm looking at data all the time, very much aware of what mental health effect there is and so on. You know, the question of when can we lift this, I think you should listen to the experts. And there are many experts.
But Dr. Poor, you've got experts on both sides. I just listened to 2 hours of experts that gave it down in Florida. I'm not sure if you've listened to them either.
Yes.
Well, so you're gonna laugh at those experts because you disagree with them. So don't tell me to listen to the experts, because we have experts on both sides on whether or not. Dr. Fauci at one point said, "No, don't wear masks." And then he came back and said, "Wear masks." The President Trump actually came out and said, everybody should just tie scarves around their face, right? And then everybody laughed at President Trump. That was early on in March, just tying scarves around. He said, just whatever you can find around, you should tie it around. Everybody made fun of him, right? So now we're flipped. Now you've got, oh no, masks, you absolutely have to wear a mask. So I want to know, you are our expert. So if you're listening to somebody, please tell me who your expert that you're listening to is, and then tell me what the metrics is in which you're going to say that no more masks have to be mandated. You can recommend masks. You don't have to mandate masks. Do you see?
You had
because
the
no other
experts
city
sitting
has
here last time from the medical center. They told you. You had the experts right here.
Okay, no, so I'm
Dr.
asking
Rupp
you, is
here,
that the
you had-
expert you're listening to?
Yes.
It's UNMC.
Yes.
Okay, so is it Dr. Rupp that you're listening to?
It's
Who is it?
Dr. Rupp, it's
Okay, so what's the metrics to where you don't have to have a mask mandate? There's a difference between a mandate and recommendations. If you can't give me a figure in which to say, listen, all you people that don't want to do this, here's a light at the end of the tunnel, here's our end goal. And I kind of think everybody wants that. I don't know too many people that say, you know what, I'm good just wearing the mask for the next year just because somebody says to. I think people want to know what the number is that we have to get to and what it's based on.
But I have to tell you, two metrics are difficult, and all those individuals will tell you right away that the metrics are not correct.
Okay, I would like to know what the metrics are. I want to know what the metrics are. And then maybe I can seek it out and I can look myself. Maybe they are correct. I don't know. But tell me what you're basing it on so that I know when I don't have to expect to be mandated to wear a mask. I do wear a mask out of respect for others, even though I don't think it works. I'm going to wear it because, oh, well, maybe I'm wrong. So I'll err on the side of caution. I don't feel that I should have to mandate other people. I think it's an overreach of government, and I think that you should make recommendations, and the good people in Nebraska, if they can, will do it. I know you say, no, maybe they won't. Okay, well, they're free not to. This is America. So let us, people who want our freedom back, know what's the number that we can anticipate getting our freedom back.
And I told you 5%, and you said you don't want to hear 5% anymore.
So it's 5% of the total. It
5%
doesn't matter how
positivity
many
rate.
tests are done.
It's World Health Organization is recommending 5% positivity rate.
So you're following the World Health Organization or UNMC? Both?
I'm sure they would tell you the same thing. But it's also case numbers. We can talk about this, but it's not going to be. Well, if you want me, I can come forward with a proposal and metrics. But I told you last time.
If we get to 5%, then no more mask mandate. That's it. It's done.
No, well, then it depends on how long. Is this just a day?
You know what?
See, that's why I'm saying.
Dr. Poor, it's fine.
I'm saying.
And I don't need to.
Councilman Melton, it's not easy. I understand.
If you're going to do something that much, you should at least have something other than just a 5%.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Melton. Councilmember Pauls, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do think we need to be careful. Whether you're for or against is not the issue. But if we start putting amendments on that we're going to, certain segments, we're going to say, okay, nonprofits. Okay, who's going to decide which nonprofits? Or if we're going to go to, like was happening the last time, private schools. Well, which private schools? Why are the private schools different than public schools? I just think we had to really be careful, and that's why, Dr. Poor, we do need more direction from you. And I know it seems like we're putting it all on your back, but we're willing to make this work. Because I'm not sitting up here just having lots of fun of talking about or having people angry at me. It's not my goal in life. But I do think we have to be careful, because if we start, then where do you stop? Then you're almost like a porcupine. The question I have, and I don't know if you can answer this or if our good attorney could. Now, can the schools have mask mandate without the city's mandate?
Yes.
What do you hear?
Yes.
Okay,
They can.
so schools can do it. They don't need us.
Correct.
Okay, the business world, can they do these mandates?
Sure.
Without
You're a
us?
private business.
Okay, so, okay, what other group does it that they feel like we're forcing them to do it? But they could do it if they so chose. Basically, everybody could do that. If I'm a small business person, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think this is what people are saying now. I know before we did this mandate, there were I don't think schools were involved at the time, but there were businesses out there doing it. I can remember going into Baker's and, oh, it's got to have the mask or Hy-Vee or Lowe's or some of those places.
Yep.
And I know they don't want to say, Councilman, you need your mask on. They're putting the pressure back on us to make that decision. But they truly believe it. And if this is a good idea, I would assume without our mandate, the schools would probably do it for the most part. Right now, because we've set a pattern. I think maybe we needed to do it for a while to set a pattern to get people accustomed. Okay, yes, I need to do it, blah, blah, blah. Because like most of us, if we're told and we practice it a while, we have a tendency, I mean, I know about this education practice, and it becomes part of the system. So whether we yay or nay, it can still be there by the choice of the schools and the businesses.
Yes, it can. Especially for the schools, it can.
Okay, so now I see for this, you only need 4 votes for this to be maintained. If 4 votes, that's all they get, then the mayor makes the decision. Am I right? So to me, it's sort of, you go down the system. Maybe the next time there will not be 6 votes, 5, 7, whatever. And you say, okay, people are telling us something. Because I think it needs to be larger than just the group of us up here. And I know we're putting a lot of pressure on you. I mean, truly, I commend you, because when people are, I know that as an administrator, people throwing darts, they say, oh my goodness, I'm trying to make this thing work. So I know from the depth of your heart, you want this to work. But we need more people like these medical profession. I do get nurses who email me and say, hey, this is wrong. But I don't need any more emails, I can assure you. But we need the leadership to be standing up there waving that flag. Because as I said, I think somebody else made a comment earlier, we do not have a physician's background up here. You know, I mean,
I agree. Thank you.
so I'm just pleading, if you give us some direction, we will follow you like the lemons, you know, go off the cliff. So I you know, I'm just trying, give us some direction, you know. Am I trying to make you feel guilty? No. Am I trying to get you to help us? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pauls. Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I find it interesting that we're here considering another extension of the mandate, and we've talked about it numerous times before about metrics, and we still aren't. I'll say those that would like to see this passed, I think, to do so or to ask it without proposing any metrics or even putting metrics on the floor to debate, I find interesting, because to me that says we have no intention of ending it, because we're just going to keep doing it until whenever. I also find it interesting that, with all due respect, Dr. Poor, I know you're getting beat up on a little bit today, but why, I'm not sure. I know we've asked you to give us the reports, but I'm not sure why we're asking for your advice. Because if your advice is that there should be a mandate, you had the authority to do so. And you stand here and you give us advice, but you don't even follow your own advice. And that's a little perplexing to me. Last thing I'll say is, back to the metrics. Regardless of the metrics, at least as I see it, it assumes that the mask is the be-all and end-all to get to that metric. And as I alluded to earlier, I have some studies that I was going to talk about next week that bring that into question. Whether or not the metric is 5% or whatever the number is, it sure seems like some of the numbers I've been hearing are metrics that are less than the influenza rate, positivity rate, raw numbers that we've seen, that we historically see. So again, even if we're talking about the metrics, is it the mask that gets us there? And regardless of the mask or the metrics, at what level is it acceptable? So I hope we'll have some more discussions about this next week. I'm sorry that you won't be here, but I'm sure we'll have some good conversation about it.
So may I just answer one?
Well, just a second. Are you finished with your remarks?
I'm finished.
Okay, there's no further lights.
Okay.
Dr. Poor, a couple things before you respond, and I will give you that opportunity, I promise you. Are you available between now and next week to answer questions to things like studies and metrics and things that council members may have, that they could contact you and email you and get your answers in advance of the hearing?
Correct. I could also be available by Zoom next week, if that is helpful.
Okay. Now, was there something you wanted to say in response to anything you heard today?
Just in response to what Councilman Harding said in regards to influenza. You know why we are treating this different is for influenza, we have a vaccine that can be used by those who are vulnerable or at high risk or the elderly. That is what we don't have with COVID-19 at this time. And that's why you are hearing that we have to go into these non-pharmaceutical intervention. And a mask is not everything. It is social distancing, mask, staying home when you are sick, washing your hands. It's all of this together, but those are the tools that we have in the toolbox at this time. I just wanted to make that comment because I had heard this several times. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, oh, I thought it never went off. Councilmember Harding, you're recognized.
I just wanted to respond to that. Then why aren't we mandating social distancing? As I said earlier, too, and again, I refer back to Dr. Merritt's comment, is that this virus is smaller than the influenza virus. And therefore, you know, even at some schools, what I'm wearing right now isn't even allowed. It's ineffective. So, no, I'm just making some general comments, but thank you, I appreciate that. So, again, I'll choose to wear a mask, and if someone asked me to wear a mask, if I would go into their business, I'd certainly do that. But again, I don't think the numbers, the 7 weeks prior to this going into effect compared to the 7 weeks before, and the 7 weeks before covers the 4th of July. So to make, you know, the argument, there's plenty to debate, but to make the argument that this 7-week period included Labor Day, the previous 7-week period included 4th of July, which I'd probably make an argument that probably had more social distancing violations than over the Labor Day weekend. But you know, we could debate this until all hours, and it's getting to that point. But again, I'll bring some more information next week. But again, regardless of the metric, which we still haven't discussed or agreed upon, it's how do you even get to that metric? What is, and I've just heard, you know, Dr. Poor say it's a combination of social distancing, washing your hands, and a mask. So we'll have more next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harding. Councilmember Pauls, you're recognized.
Thank you. The only issue that I have with that is a lot of this discussion must, or should be, I should use the word should be done before we vote on it next week. If we're going to go in front of the council next week and have this discussion amongst ourselves, I don't know if there's anything to gain by that other than just prolong. I think what we need to do is make sure that we sit down, those of us who have questions, with our leadership over Audie and Dr. Poor, and try to find out those things ahead of time. Because if we just bring this up again, we're just going to continue this circle of information, and I don't know if that's of value other than playing to the audience. I really like to get some of these questions settled as much as possible before the vote. Otherwise, it's a continuation. We might as well keep it the public hearing open. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Melton, you're recognized.
Yeah, I would just like to say that this isn't a discussion. These are questions that we need answers to, and perhaps if any of the other council members who are in favor of this have anything that you would like to add or answer privately, please let me know, because I think what I was told today is the information's not available or we don't have it. It's just generally what the experts say. So I don't think there is an answer to my question. That's the problem. So if anybody does have an answer to my questions, please contact me, because I would love to hear it and consider it.
Thank you. Councilmember Gray, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to be very brief here. We're in a pandemic, and the pandemic is going to be over when the pandemic is over. For us, I'm listening to the science, and I'm going to listen to Dr. Poor, and I'm going to listen to Dr. Rupp, and I would encourage people to read Dr. Ali Khan's book, The Next Pandemic. When you get that kind of information, because it is almost impossible in a pandemic to tell you when all of these things that we have put in place are going to be over. Quite frankly, we're still, for a long time, we were stabbing in the dark. We didn't know what it was because we didn't know the characteristics of this pandemic. We still don't know all the characteristics of this pandemic. What we do know is that what the experts are saying to us, and when I'm talking about experts, we have significant expertise in this city. In fact, I tell people if you want to get sick, Omaha is the place to get sick because we've got people who understand Ebola. We've got people who understand COVID-19. We've got people who have written books on this. And the individuals that are suggesting that we wear a mask are just not people in Omaha or in this community. We're talking about experts from around the world who are saying the same thing. So for me, I'm not a doctor, nor am I an epidemiologist, nor and quite frankly, the people that do this, my hat is off to them because it takes a significant time to learn this. It takes a significant time to understand it. But as you read like Dr. Ali Khan's book, you know that the next pandemic is coming. You just don't know when, and you don't know the characteristics of it. So for us to sit here and attempt to glean from Dr. Poor or anybody else when this is going to be over, I don't know that anybody can give you an answer to that. It's over when it's over. I just don't know how you get past that. And if you're going to listen to people, to me, since I don't know this, it would seem logical to me to listen to the people who know it best. Those who are in epidemiology, those who work with these people every day, who are involved in this on a regular basis, it would seem to me those would be the people that we would listen to. They are certainly the people that I'm going to listen to. And I'm going to be supportive of a mask mandate next week. People need to understand that because I'm going to follow the science and I'm going to follow the experts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Dr. Poor's recommendation, as I remember and speaking for it, so people should have no surprises or questions where I stand, is I believe she wanted a 5% average positivity rate. We're not talking about only 100 cases being done in terms of testing a week. We have thousands upon thousands of tests. We're getting good data. And that's the number that she's recommended, that Dr. Rupp and the infectious disease specialist in Omaha recommended, and those are the recommendations that I'm following. And it shouldn't be any mystery as to what my position on this. And whether I'm in the majority or minority, that's what I've said, that's what I'm saying. Am I open to other ideas? Sure, I'll listen. I'll listen to what you have to propose, but that's where I stand. And I understand some people are against them. Some people think it's something that should just be recommended. But I think when we have a public health crisis like we have now, that the interests of protecting public health in our community is the most important thing that we do. And so if anyone wants to criticize me or say I'm in error or whatever, I'd rather err on the side of safety and public health and protecting people than not. And the fact is, that's my position. I'm sticking to it. So, thank you. Councilmember Gray, is your light still on?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Harding.
Thanks, Mr. President. I'd just make a suggestion then. Why don't you include the metric in your ordinance so that people know what the metric is, and if that metric is met, then the ordinance goes away.
I was thinking the same thing. Why don't we just put something like that in? Dr. Poor said she's willing to work on some recommendation language in that, so I'm open to that. If there are any other lights? No further lights? Madam Clerk.
Non-action items. Items 39 through 47 do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and/or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on agenda for consideration.
Roll call.
Palermo. Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 7:16.